as a new week begins, the ceasefire in Gaza is being put to the test as Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly strikes yesterday. They say it's because Hamas militants killed 2 soldiers. The military hit multiple targets in the Gaza Strip using aircraft and artillery. And Israeli security officials said the transfer of aid into the territory was halted but has since resumed. Meanwhile, work continued in Khan Yunis as bulldozers moved rubble in search of remains of hostages. Hamas has handed over the remains of 11 hostages so far. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are in Israel today. The two sat down with 60 Minutes about how the Gaza ceasefire came together. They also touched on their message to Israel and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu moving forward.
I don't feel that way. And I thought he steered his country through some really difficult circumstances.
People think that he prolonged the incarceration of the hostages for his own political future.
I don't think that's the case.
The biggest message that we've tried to convey to the Israeli leadership now is that now that the war is over, if you want to integrate Israel with the broader Middle East, you have to find a way to help the Palestinian people thrive and do better.
How are you doing with that message?
We're just getting started.
And now I want to bring in BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner for the latest. Frank, thank you for joining us today. What does the shaky ceasefire stand as of right now?
Well, shaky is exactly the right word. It is not dead, but it is in a very fragile, perilous state. You saw yesterday horrific violence, over 44 people killed, mostly Palestinians, but some Israelis as well. Let's be really clear about this. U.S. pressure is absolutely key to keeping this ceasefire deal on track. Without the U.S., it's really almost certainly going to fall apart. And my understanding, and I've spoken to various officials in the last 24 hours, that there has been a lot of behind-the-scenes U.S. pressure on the Israeli side to exercise restraint because there are forces here in Israel, political forces, that are pushing for a complete resumption of a full-scale war in Gaza. And yet, as some people have commented, that area looks like a nuclear bomb has hit it. So even though phase 1 isn't quite complete yet, the delegates who are in town, that's Steve Witkoff, of course, the U.S. Special Envoy, and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, they really want to talk about phase 2. How is Gaza going to be governed? And what's going to be the future of the region? They want to move on to big issues like that. But we haven't quite finished phase 1 yet. There are still 16 dead Israeli hostages who haven't been returned yet, and the ceasefire isn't complete.
And Frank, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner today. What are we learning about that meeting, and what do we expect to come out of the meeting between Vice President J.D. Vance and Netanyahu?
So very little has come out of that meeting. The Prime Minister's office issued the most minimalist of statements about it, which often implies that there has been a fairly frank discussion. There is a lot of U.S. momentum behind all of this, because you remember something called the Abraham Accords. Jared Kushner was absolutely instrumental in securing the Abraham Accords, which saw Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates and Morocco all established full diplomatic and trade ties with Israel, this country here. And President Trump would very much like to extend that to Saudi Arabia. But right now there's a bit of an impasse because the Israeli Prime Minister and his government are absolutely opposed to giving the Palestinians an independent sovereign state. So the Saudis are not going to join the Abraham Accords unless there is a clear path to a Palestinian state. And I should just mention, by the way, there is a lot of violence going on the West Bank, settler violence, that is condoned or looking the other way by Israeli forces, where Israeli settlers, and let's not forget that these settlements are considered illegal under international law, not under Israeli law, but internationally they are trying to evict Palestinians from their olive groves, their farms, their homes, right across the West Bank. And yet that is the area that is supposed to be the core area of a future sovereign Palestinian state. And there are some people here in Israel who say, look, you know what? That ship has sailed. That train has left the station. It's too late to have two states living side by side because the Palestinians will just use it as a springboard to attack us. There are others who say we are never going to be able to live in peace and quiet in Israel until the Palestinians get their own homeland. So trying to peer through this gloom, through this murk, all this smoke, are those two envoys and all the huge team that are supporting them. And I should just say, by the way, the US military is very heavily engaged right now down in Ashdod, south of here, in something called the Civil Military Coordination Center, where they are around 200 US troops are helping to try and find a route forward for Gaza to get this international stabilization force in there, properly supported, that will try to fill the power vacuum down in Gaza, and so that Israel can withdraw and Palestinians can live in peace down there and not attack Israel.
Yeah, so much to take into consideration there. Frank Gardner, thank you for your reporting. We appreciate it.